All right, Enzo Maresca was fuming after Chelsea's 2-hour Club World Cup weather delay. We'd seen Reece James score the goal, then play stopped. He said US is probably not the right place to host the tournament. He and Reece James had this to say after the match.
I think for me personally it's no football. It's already 7, 8, 9 games that they suspended here. I think it's a joke, to be honest. It's no football.
We got to 85 minutes and then had to sit and wait for, I don't know, a long period. And it's quite disruptive, you know, when you're in the flow of the game. Lots of substitutions, you know, trying to get warm and stay warm. You know, it was difficult. The climate was, you know, very hot and humid, and the pitch probably wasn't the greatest as well.
I'm talking as a manager, because when you are 2 hours inside and you try to keep them in the game, but for 2 hours, they are speaking with the family outside for safety reason. They are eating something, they are playing, they are laughing. How you can keep them 2 hours inside focus? It's a joke. I can understand that for security reason, you have to suspend the game. But if you suspend 7, 8 games, that means that probably is not the right place to do this competition.
The storms and bad weather have now caused 6 games, all held in different cities, to be suspended during the tournament. This, the longest of them, Benfica against Chelsea, a game that kicked off at 9 p.m. local time and finished at 1:40 a.m. the following day.
To be fair, looking at some of those games, people would be happy if they were just called off full time, wouldn't they? He's turned into an angry man, isn't he, Enzo Maresca? At the end of the season, he was telling journalists to F you, and he's been angry since he's got here. And I think there's some sort of vibe here, because, you know, I don't like to see other people angry like myself, but when he was managing Leicester City, this is true, when he was managing Leicester City, Enzo Maresca and his family rented my house out in the Midlands, and I'd feel that when he entered into that property, he was probably the happiest man on the planet. And there's some sort of vibe in that house.
Bad energy.
There's an energy and a vibe in that house, clearly, that just turns anybody that goes in there into the most miserable, angry, upsets at everything man in the world. And he's turned into that.
He's not joking, by the way. This is actual, real information.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about the energy in the house.
No, not the energy.
But he
the
did. Yeah, he was. And he
staff.
was a very pleasant chap and paid his rent on time, thankfully. But he has turned into, and I think he was a little angry when he was at Leicester when they were promoted, because they struggled at the second half of the season, and he got a bit of stick from the Leicester fans, believe it or not, and they won the league. He's entered a new arena now, hasn't he, at Chelsea, where, you know, there was possibilities that they would not make the top 4 last year, or the top 5, which they did. There was a little bit of questioning from the media about his tactics, about the squad, and about this, and he got very angry about it. So he's in a different arena now, isn't he? He's in an arena where managing Chelsea, everything's been questioned. But again, I'll go back to this. He could win this competition, and it will matter not a job. Because what Todd Burley and the Chelsea fans and all the sort of investors at Chelsea will look at is how they improve next year, particularly in the Champions League and in the Premier League. And this is just a build-up for him, but he's so sort of tense and hyped up now that I can fear to see what he's going to be like if the wheels don't turn properly at Chelsea in the season. And that's where he's going to be judged this year, and he knows that.
He was successful when he was renting your house, so have you not got an apartment for rent in London for him? That might be the answer.
On my salary? Oh, Smogs, I don't think
now,
so.
Alexis, I know you haven't been at any of these games where there's been a weather delay, but I know you've spoken to some of the people in and around the teams about it.
Yeah, Kay, and honestly, I agree with Enzo Maresca as well. But also remember, he is Italian, so that spicy side does come out. Kay, I know you know that very well. But look, he's absolutely right. I mean, it has been frustrating, not just for the players, not just for the technical staff around them, not just for the managers, but even for us, the journalists and the fans who we keep talking about so much in this tournament, the fans who FIFA and everyone are desperate to fill these seats so that it looks good on TV, so that we can get an idea of what kind of turnouts we will get next year at the World Cup, which is when all of this really matters, let's be honest. And I wouldn't necessarily say that the United States isn't the perfect host for these kind of tournaments, I would probably say certain places, certain stadiums, and certain states maybe not the right host for these. Look, we know Florida, there's a lot of open-air stadiums there. We have had, and we're probably going to get some more weather here in Atlanta right now, and when it rains, and it pours, and the lightning starts to come, but obviously it helps with the domed stadiums, and I'm not saying every stadium has to be one. I know that can also affect the pitch and the grass and everything, but also when we were for Manchester City's game against Juventus, it started pouring and the fans just had to run for cover. Some ran back to their cars, leaving at halftime because they were just thinking, look, this really isn't worth it. And Orlando, of course, Florida, we know how flat it is. When the lightning comes, it's going to be a delay of who knows how long. And overall, it just creates such a frustrating situation for everyone to watch and everyone to be involved in. So that's definitely something that I think FIFA should be thinking about when we consider the World Cup next year.
So what they're moaning about, though, is it the kick-off times or is it the weather?
I think it's the weather delay. And,
well,
and
you can't control the weather.
If you change the pitches, it's going to be these same stadiums next year. That's something you can't
Yeah, but the weather
control.
changes. The weather's not... Sometimes it pours down, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes there's lightning, sometimes some states get tornadoes, some don't. You know, you can't just judge it. You can't say, right, the World Cup's coming partly to America in a year's time. We can't play it this time because the weather's going to be this. We don't know. You just don't know.
Well, they changed the Qatar World Cup, didn't they, to a different time of the year?
Well, that's because it's
Yeah, but
that's because it's unplayable. Unplayable in the summer at that temperature. Look, if anybody watches golf, anybody watches the PGA Tour, it goes around the country. Sometimes tournaments go swimmingly. And other times a storm comes in and they have flash flooding and they have to get supporters off or they have to get the players off and then they resume. You cannot... And what are they going to do? Take the PGA Tour to Europe? What are they going to do? They play every weekend. They play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and sometimes it's perfect, sometimes it's not. You cannot always just go in the weather. Maybe kickoff times could allow better for it if there's a delay and it's not 1 o'clock in the morning. But that's then a problem slotting your TV in for games being on at different times and then globally, your global TV audience. It's very difficult. And I'm no FIFA fan and I'm no UEFA fan. You know that. But it's very, very difficult here. You're trying to keep all your partners happy. You're trying to keep all the countries happy. You're trying to make sure as many people, and I'm talking about a World Cup, not a Club World Cup, because I couldn't give a toss about that. When the World Cup comes, it's about trying to get as many people to watch it as possible and have the balance right with safety of the supporters and have the weather conditions as good as you can. The problem is there's very few places in the world you can take any sort of sporting event and have a perfect scenario. And I think we've had a very unusual scenario this year in America, particularly in the East Coast, with some of the weather we've had in the last 10 days or so. It's not normal, it's brought more storms in, and it's been unfortunate. That is not to say, and by the way, when the World Cup comes, guess what? It'll rain. And it'll pour. And if you don't like it, sod off. But it'll pour. And you play in the rain. You can't play in lightning, you can't play in something that's more severe. But it will rain and you will have to adjust to it. But you can't sit here and say the World Cup's going to be a disaster because this storm's going to come in and that storm's going to come in. Because maybe it won't. We just do not know. This tournament, thus far, it's been unfortunate. It's happened. It's not ideal. But I think come the World Cup, it could be a completely better scenario. If we're just talking about weather, kick-off times, that's something different.
What do you think about Maresca saying that then, Frank, that perhaps it's not the right place to play a World Cup, the US?
Now, even if I understand what he means, because I guess for 2 hours it's hard to keep the players ready to carry on, but the two teams are in the same problematics at that time, and he's not going to be the only one. If he wants to criticize something, he has to criticize the competition, because what's going to happen to those clubs who are involved now, especially the one in Europe, for the next season? Are they going to be tired? Are they going to have many players injured? Let's see. But so far, the only thing you can criticize is that competition. But I just want to remind that in 2002, the World Cup in Korea and Japan have been held months before because of the monsoon. So it already happened, and you just mentioned Qatar. So you can deal a little bit, but that's a World Cup. next season. And you want to see a World Cup in different locations. We cannot always play in Europe because we are in a better weather condition. And I'm so happy that so far we cannot control the weather. But really, yeah, Mr. Maresca, be focused on something a little bit more interesting, because you cannot deal with that, and you are not the only one. And it's nice to play in the US, in Japan, I don't know, in Qatar before the World Cup before. That's interesting. That's for us in Europe, and as players, also former players, it's nice to be there. So don't do a European thing. It's not worth it.
I was in Donetsk in 2012 with John Champion, actually, working for ITV Sport in England. And the Ukraine-France game, I believe it was halfway through the game, and we had a major storm come in, and the game, I think it was off for half an hour or 45 minutes. We had to go back to the studio, and they had to fill. It's not an ideal scenario. Look, they had a World Cup here in '94. My memory's not great. I don't think it was the greatest World Cup, but they had a World Cup here. They learned about the kickoff times, the heat, and the whatnot. These things as a player, it's what makes you stronger. It's when you go to these major tournaments, I'm talking about next year, it's the things that you have to deal with. For the players, it's okay. You go in the dressing room. It's not ideal. But you go in the dressing room, and when it all clears up, you come back out, you do your warm-up, you play. The bigger problem is, obviously, when I think, is when there's 90, 100,000 people and something really bad comes in. That's where the issue. The players will have to deal with it, and it's what the adversity throws at you at major tournaments, and it's how you deal with it is generally how you advance in these tournaments. I honestly think come next year, I don't think it's going to be a major problem. I think we'll see some small pockets, but I don't think it's going to destroy, absolutely not, the World Cup in this country.
That's a good segue, actually, talking about crowd sizes, Alexis, because it's 25,000 yesterday in Charlotte. What did you see in this game today? Was it growing crowds for you now that we're getting further into the tournament?
Yeah, honestly, towards the end of the game, the crowd, I would say the capacity of this stadium is about 71,000, and the official number that we got was about 65,000, and I thought that was pretty accurate. At the beginning, it did look a bit scanty, because I do remember going downstairs to get something and noticing that there was still quite a lot of people at the gates that they were not getting in. I think they're still having some technical issues with how people are scanning tickets and getting in. They're getting used to the technology, and that is causing a hold-up usually in the first half. I know for sure a lot of people missed that first PSG goal, but once halftime came and the second half, the stadium definitely filled up nicely. So the crowds definitely are getting better for something like Lionel Messi facing a star-studded PSG as well. Newly crowned Champions League winners definitely drew the crowd as well. Now no Leo Messi or Luis Suarez left in the competition, but still some pretty big names that we're expecting more fans to turn out for, but still not quite the sold-out full-capacity stadiums as yet.
Yeah, as yet. Okay, thank you so much, Alexis. Great to talk to you as always. More Club World Cup action coming up. And Alexis will be at more games as the tournament continues. Monday, we've got Inter against Fluminense and Man City against Al Hilal. On Tuesday, it's Real Madrid taking on Juventus and Dortmund against Monterrey. All matches streaming live on DAZN. So while Chelsea are enduring weather delays in the Club World Cup, they've been very active in the transfer window. We know that Liam Delap is already in, and now according to reports it will be Jamie Gittins and Joao Pedro who will be following him. Joao Pedro expected to be next, in fact could be flying to the US to have the medical and join up with the Club World Cup squad. We talked about Gittins the other day, so let's talk more about Joao Pedro.
You don't want to talk about Kepa?
Well, wasn't.
Yeah.
Well, you know what?
How much they paid him?
Yeah, do you know what stuck out in that graphic to me like an absolute, like a sore thumb? Like it was flashing. Was I think they paid about 70, I might be wrong, about £75 million, euros, whatever it was, not dollars. Right. About 75 million thereabouts for Kepa from Spain. And it said on that graphic, 5 million sale. That's hardly getting your money back, is it?
80 million euro, apparently.
80 million euro. But it's about 75 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's 5 million. Oh,
2018, yes.
That's a
Well
blow,
done.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine.
Joao
But if you
Pedro.
wouldn't mind, it would be nice to talk about Joao Pedro.
It does. You want? I mean, I just thought. I just noticed that.
Are you happy with that signing if it's to go ahead, Frank?
I have to say I'm happy. I watched him playing, and every time I saw him playing, he impressed me. Now again, the question mark will be how you can handle a different pressure coming from Brighton to Chelsea. We thought that even with Cucurella the first year, and we saw that so many times where some players have a hard time, settling down, even if they know the Premier League. It's not the same club, it's not the same atmosphere, and you have to be good because you are in a big competition with other players, and you are surrounded by other unexperienced players at that level. And that's my bigger question. As long as the club doesn't change its way of thinking the football and how to build the squad, I will always have the same question marks. How when you come from another club, you handle it because you have no supports from experienced players, and that's crucial. When I came from Chelsea, we had Dennis Wise, we had Craig, we had Mark Hughes, we had Dan Petrescu, Ruud Gullit. That was an experienced club, even if Chelsea wasn't the Chelsea that we have known after. But that was, we had young players and we were surrounded by experienced players, and Chelsea doesn't have that.
If you're thinking about what kind of player Joao Pedro is and you haven't seen as much of Brighton as probably we have, technically he's a very good player, but it begs the question, what does Chelsea want and what does Enzo Maresca want? Because if he wants a striker that's, he's technically better than Nico Jackson. I don't think there's any doubt about that from a technical aspect. But if Chelsea are looking for a kind of Harry Kane-esque striker that stands his ground in the number 9 position, and is it what we would call a penalty box striker who's waiting for the scraps, then that's not Joao Pedro. Joao Pedro is a front man who can play, in 2 or 3 positions in the front, but when he plays in the number 9 role, he drifts around. He doesn't just play that number 9 and post up in the middle and wait for that ball to come into his feet. If you watch him, he drifts out to the wider position, he drifts deep into midfield, he drifts out to the left. He likes to go wandering around a little bit. And whether Chelsea will try and change that, because Danny Welbeck played a lot for Brighton through the middle. And maybe they played as a pair at times with Joao Pedro a little bit deeper. But he's not a static front man. He likes to drift around into different positions. And whether that is something that Enzo Maresca wants, or whether Maresca wanted an out-and-out number 9 that was just going to hit the ball off his shin into the back of the net and get 35 goals a year, I don't know. Because I don't think, and if you even looked at the graphic that came up, he's not that kind of player. His stats are good, but they're not, and he's quite young, he's 23 still. His stats are good, but they're not mind-blowing in terms of goals. So I don't think they're getting a natural goal scorer per se. Yep. But they're getting a link-up player who's very physical, who will run at defenders, but he will drift out into those wide areas. And it's whether Chelsea can get runners from midfield or got the wider guys to come in and supplement that. I don't know. Good player, I think a step up from Nico Jackson. But if you think you're getting a natural number 9 that's just going to hang about looking to score goals, then I don't think he's that player.
How do they all play together? There's players coming in, they're obviously doing what they need to do. They're beating out other teams to get the signatures of some of these players. How do they all play together?
Well, I tell you what, I don't know how he's going to play this year. He could throw Liam Delap up there and do what Brighton did a little bit and play Joao Pedro just a little deeper off him. And that would be 2 very physical players that they would have sort of in that front area. Now, he would have to maybe change the shape a little bit if he's playing with 2 wide guys and take a midfielder out. So I don't know what he's going to do. Joao Pedro will give him some sort of flexibility because he can do both roles. Liam Delap cannot. He's a front guy. That's what he is. That's kind of the only job he will do, and he will run and he'll fight and he will do all that. Joao Pedro's got that physicality, but he's got a bit more subtlety about his game. I think he's technically better as well. So, obviously Gittins coming in will give him options in the wider areas. Mykhailo Mudryk look as if he's going to be out, but I don't think that's a big blow in terms of football. Financially, it's going to be a blow how Chelsea deal with it. In terms of football, I don't think they're going to miss a lot. Obviously, Jadon Sancho, that's been a problem. It didn't work out as they wanted. Nono Madueke has certainly put his arm up to be one of the wide players. Pedro Neto on the other side. So he has some options, but I think what it is going to do, I think, is probably relegate Nico Jackson to I think where he should be, certainly at Chelsea, which is a player who's going to play when needed and come off the bench.
Frankie, you get the final thought here.
Well, there are lots of players. Sorry, I hear myself. Sorry. There are lots of players, you know, at the front, and it can be an issue, and it's hard for young players to feel that competition between them and to handle it. It would be interesting to see, for me, Madueke on the right side, maybe Delap as a real striker, and Joao Pedro around with just behind them Cole Palmer. That could be very interesting.